reinventing the way consumers are buying cars. Tell me a little bit about the delicate dance that you're doing with dealers. That must be an interesting dynamic.
Well, I think that, a lot of people, when they hear about TrueCar, the first thing that comes to mind is, wow, dealers must really hate you. And certainly in 2012, there was a lot of evidence to that effect. We were boycotted to the point where it was pretty unlikely that the business was going to survive. For us, I think what we found is that it's much harder to be a dealer than most people understand. The average consumer, certainly the average 35-year or younger consumer, millennials, digital natives, believe that dealers make, on average, 15% to 20% profit when they sell a car. And the reality is they make closer to 2%. And so there's just a real trust gap and a perception gap between what's going on at the dealership and how consumers feel about that. And so you're right, there is a new way to buy a car, and it really is about the power of information. And today, for the first time, you can now see what others paid for the car. That transactional data has never been available before. I grew up on guidebooks and things like Kelley Blue Book and whatnot, which are always about an expert opinion, whereas today we have the facts, we have the data, and computational analytics and transaction data really have now, I think, given us a view to what's the baseline reality of what people are paying. And you can be a first-time car shopper and in 1 minute or less know what's a fair deal. That's a really big shift in terms of the power, and it has a consequence for retail. It certainly represents change, and I think change is always scary. So we're forcing that change. We're a part of that. We're definitely empowering consumers with more information. It turns out, though, I think that trust is a better business model. I think that if consumers actually knew how little the dealer made and they could actually trust that the price that the dealer was offering the car for was a fair price, they would be a more confident, more satisfied shopper, and they would have a better experience in buying a car, and the dealer would actually make more money.
And from your standpoint, your outlook for the auto industry and also your outlook for TrueCar, what's next?
Well, I think the outlook for the auto industry is actually quite positive. A lot of what happens in the overall automotive ecosystem is compounded by the fact that it's not just selling a car. Most transactions involve financing or leasing. 90% of people don't pay cash for their car. And then there's insurance, maintenance, repair, refueling, accessories, and then ultimately the trade-in of your car. And in sort of looking at how transactions occur, the average consumer buys a new car or another car once every 6 years. All of those things in the ecosystem get unleashed when a transaction occurs. And so I think that one of the things that we really want to influence is the level of friction between a customer and going into that next transaction. If we can reduce that friction and increase the velocity from, say, 6 years down to 5 years, the size of that ecosystem grows pretty dramatically. And if you look at all of those things end to end, it's about a $4 trillion ecosystem in the US annually. So it's almost 20% of GDP. It's one of the most inefficient verticals, period. And so the idea of making the velocity and the efficiency of that space greater, I think, really benefits all parties. So I do see a day where you could get to a 20 million car market. We're currently at 15. I think the outlook for new cars is good. I think the ability to afford a new car is almost better than the ability to afford a used car, which is a pretty dramatic inflection point if you think about it, because if you're entering the market for the first time as a consumer, the ability to choose a new vehicle versus a used vehicle certainly comes with all the benefits of buying a new car. Greater reliability and dependability and lower ownership cost. And so I think that I think it is a good time to be in the car business in general. I think it is a challenging time to be in auto retail, and there is a real shift that is occurring in terms of how dealers sell cars. And I think if you look at really the fundamentals of the dealer or the retail model, they've got four major cost centers in selling cars: marketing, commissions, the overhead to operate the dealership, and the depreciation cost or carry cost on a car that's waiting to get sold. And so the average dealer is spending about $2,000 to sell a car. And I think we can bring them a lot of efficiency. And so one of the real gains of a process change like TrueCar is that the average dealer can cut some of their cost and either pass that savings on to their customer in the form of a lower price or retain more margin. And that's really going to be the key to future success at the dealership level.
So you've been so successful with TrueCar. What's next? Is there an IPO on the horizon?
My wife's name is IPO. Her name is Ipo and spelled IPO. And that's probably the best answer for that question that I can give you. But I can tell you that I am all focused on TrueCar. We're so excited about how big the space is. We see so much of the problem yet to be solved. We're just focused today on what you pay for the car, but we are not yet solving how you're going to pay for the car, how you're going to handle the trade-in, and all of the other related things. So the category is huge, the opportunity is big, and we're just getting started. The fact that we've got the dealer partners back on board, the industry supporting us now, and the business doing very well, I think are all just baseline expectations for what's next.